Okay. Hello, everybody. Yeah, my name's Andrew Dinning. Sorry about the delay there. Best laid plans go to waste. Yeah, we had a few technical issues at that point. Hopefully we don't have any more. But anyway, I looked at the list of attendees and I see we've got existing shareholders and also some people that aren't shareholders. So I'll try to balance this presentation to give people the I guess a bit of a balance across, introducing the company and what we're up to. So I guess without further ado, I'll share our deck with you now. Okay. So getting into it, obviously Sarama commenced trading on the ASX this week under the symbol SRR. We're already listed on the TSX and trading under the symbol SWA there. The ASX listing has been a bit of a journey for us, but I'll kind of talk more about that in a second. Forward-looking statements. This presentation is actually on our website, so I'll let you read that at your leisure, particularly given that we've eaten into people's time a bit already. We also, when we sent the invite out, we asked for people to send through questions. I'll cover off some of the questions we received at the end, but also feel free after the presentation to contact me or Paul or you guys or whoever you feel like if you have any further questions. Hopefully the presentation generates a bit of thought from your side. For those people though that aren't shareholders, the key highlights of Sarama is we operate in Burkina FASO in West Africa. We've got a large land position in two of the main gold belts in the country, so around 1,800 square kilometres. Our primary project is the SANUTURA project. It's located in the southwest of the country. It's in the Hyundai belt, so that's a very prolific gold belt. So Sarama has a fairly commanding land position in the southern part of that belt, and it's really dominated by Sarama and Endeavour Mining now. The SANUTURA project's just shy of 3 million ounces. Probably the key thing for us on the project is about a third of that resource is oxides. So it's pretty key for us from a startup point of view. Obviously, the more oxides we get, the more straightforward the startup position will be. And also about 2/3 of the resource is over 2 grams a tonne. So it's a fairly robust system. It's a big system. And we've still got a lot of exploration targets across the whole SANUTURA project. We've got quite a lot of drilling planned for the projects. We've already mobilised teams to the field now. So we've got around 50,000 metres of drilling planned. Probably 3/4 of that will be fairly shallow oxide focused drilling, and looking at free milling high grade fresh rock targets as well. So we've got plenty to keep us going there. We anticipate starting to get drill results out in the next couple of months as the rigs get drilling and we get samples through and get assays back, and we can batch and put them out. The drilling really is only aimed at extensional and regional type work. We're not really looking to do a lot of infill. There is a few data gaps in the resource model that we want to close. It'll give us a quick hit on a few ounces, but we'd aim to have the oxide resource solidly through 1 million ounces following this next campaign. The company's valuation is still very compelling. It was fairly keenly priced in the IPO. I think that was kind of testament to the level of interest that we had. So we raised at the upper limit of what we're looking to raise. So we took $8 million Australian in the IPO. We had demand for a lot more than that before we shut it down. So we have a good spread of shareholders now from retail through sophisticated investors and institution, and we had a lot of existing shareholders support us through the process as well. I think the other point to note where we operate is that the TANKORO deposit, which is the main deposit in our SANUTURA project, is proximal to Endeavour's Bantu deposit to the west. There's about 4 million ounces within a 6-kilometre radius of our TANKORO deposit. So really the ultimate value play here should be putting that together. Just quickly on the corporate side of things, Simon Jackson, who's fairly well known on the street in Perth, he's the non-exec chairman. So Simon and I have known each other for quite some time. So Simon's actually a founder of the company. We put the company back together back in 2010, listed at late 2011. So there's a number of board and management, who were involved back at that point in time. Simon sits on the board of Resolute. He's the chairman of Predictive. So he's been active in the West African space for a very long time. My background, I saw there's a few people on the call that I know, but my background's mining operations with WMC prior to moving offshore. So I have a lot of experience in emerging markets. Ran Moto Gold Mines through until the takeover by Randgold. So Moto is quite a big project that's rebranded Kibali and in production in the DRC now. I think that did around 800,000 ounces last year. Adrian Bias, he's also fairly well known. He's a geo, adds a lot of value to the board. And Steve Zninovich is also a recent addition to the board. And Steve's a fairly handy appointee as well. So Steve's background was with Lycopodium, so he's a feasibility and projects guy. He's been doing feasibility and project work in West Africa since the 90s. So given where the company's at as a late stage explorer, Steve's a pretty good addition to the team. I'll just let you look at the capital structure. Probably the main takeaways from that is that it's fairly clean. And then we have a fairly experienced management team. We don't have a massive team, but everyone's got a fairly complementary skill set. So as mentioned, my background's operations, but really I've been operating in international markets for the last 20 years in Africa and Russia and UK, North America. Paul Schmid, who works with me, he's a mining engineer. He looks at how the business comes together and looks at opportunities, corporate opportunities. Jack Hamilton, he's the guy that found Moto. He's discovered a number of projects in Africa. And Louis, CFO, he's worked in a number of emerging markets, which I think is pretty important for where the business is at now. Looking at shareholder breakdown, it's a fairly good spread. It was a bit chunky before the IPO, but I think that's kind of spread it out a bit more now. I won't spend a lot of time on BURKINA except to kind of point out that it is a very active mining jurisdiction. We operate in the southwest of the country, so from a geopolitical point of view, that's preferential. You can see the Hyundai Gold Belt running down there. We have Endeavour Mining in the north, then Fortuna Silver, which was Rox Gold, then moving down to the south where we operate. So in that belt there, there's over 20 million ounces drilled up across the different projects there. So it's a very prolific belt. It's still relatively underexplored and a lot of discovery still being made there. And it's just really a function of money in the ground. So looking a bit more closely at the projects, SANUTURA itself, as I mentioned, that's our principal asset, just under 3 million ounces in resources. A lot of drilling lined up on that, and we've got visibility to a long life CIL mine development. The main focus of the work there is to get something that we can put an oxide only producing asset in that'll give us 6 or 7 years of oxides before we upgrade the circuit for the various material types. So we think we're pretty close to that point now, and we'd aim to be there at the end of the current round of drilling. So the question for us now is we've got a big deposit that underpins the value of the company. The question for us really is how big we can grow that. So obviously 3 million ounces is just around the corner. We'd like to get it north of 3.5 million. Bearing in mind a lot of the ounces coming in should be fairly shallow, so they'll be highly accretive to any development plan we have as well. KOUMANDARA, it's an early stage exploration project, but very interesting. And then we have a joint venture with Endeavour, which is next door to our SANUTURA project. We earned our interest in that vending in a project, but Endeavour's the manager on that. Looking more closely at the project, as I mentioned, it's just shy of 3 million ounces. There's two main deposits, TANKORO and BONDI. So TANKORO is a porphyry dike system. BONDI sits on a mafic sediment contact. It's different geologically speaking. There's a significant high grade component to the resource as well. So when you apply a 1 gram cut, you have 500,000 ounces at 2.5 grams in indicated and another 1.8 million ounces at 1.9 grams in inferred. So I guess the key point about that is from a startup point of view on the project, it means we should be able to high grade the schedule and target a pretty quick payback. So we do get that grade distribution across all material types. BONDI is a higher grade deposit and it's all free milling. And part of the exploration program coming up now will be to verify some of the historical work, because that was a discovery made by Orezone Gold. So there'll be some verification work, but really looking to grow that, down plunge and along strike, which I'll talk more about in a second. We have over 30 compelling exploration targets across the project areas. So there's still a lot of work to do. Really, the main aim now is to hit everything obvious. I guess we've deemed them low-hanging ounces that are proximal to the resource, but also targets that sit within the project area that we want to get some holes into and have a look at them. So the project's been started drilling for a few years through things outside our control. So the IPO has financed us to let us get on with the work that needs to be done. So looking a bit more closely at BONDI, this was a project we covered for a while before we managed to get it off of Orezone. It was a stranded asset in their portfolio. They're very much focused on building their Bombore mine at the moment, which is up closer to Ouagadougou. They're due to pour first gold on that, I think, in Q3 this year. And that's running on time, on budget, which is good to see. But this asset we acquired from Orezone, we incorporated into the resource last year. We had some tenure delays on it that was sorted out in August. But if you look at some of the historical drilling into this, and if we were putting these results out now, I think people would be getting fairly excited. 52 at 5, 13 at 20, 66 at 3.8, 70 at 3 are not small intercepts. And really the question for us is, can we grow this and what it looks like at depth? The met on this is clean as well, so good recoveries up to 97% in oxide and fresh. And it's got about 6 kilometres of strike width and up to 30 strike length and up to 30 metres in width. And we see this as a satellite for TANKORO, and we'd go into a central facility there. So this long section, I guess, really shows us why we're quite interested in BONDI. You can see from the grade bins there in the resource model, we've got these apparent chutes in the northern part of the deposit that there's no drilling, so you can see the drill hole traces on those chutes there. The top 70 to 100 metres is very well drilled, but the deeper drilling is fairly sparse. So I guess our aim is to look at what's going on this at depth and also stick some more holes into the areas where we're seeing the high grade zones. So when Orezone modelled this, they modelled it using a different approach to us. There's a lot of work went into this, remodelling it from the raw data, and it's given us a bit more granularity in how the mineralisation presents. So we'll get out and stick some holes into this. But if you look at the left-hand side of that image, you can see that the drilling is very shallow, and in the resource model, that's 2.5 to 5 gram material. So for us, this is a fairly interesting and a fairly important piece of the equation. The other thing with BONDI, when we remodeled it, we downgraded a lot of Orezone's work, so it just sits in inferred now. But there's also a large unclassified part of the resource where there was either data gaps or we weren't happy with QA/QC on certain holes, so they were dropped out of the resource. So what you see in this image here is that the light blue is the inferred resource, and the darker blue is unclassified. So the unclassified is actually modelled, but not included in the resource. So with this, we'll stick holes into these areas, and they should bring ounces into the picture straight away, and they should be decent grade and free milling. So We can probably add 20% to the resource on the Bondi deposit just by doing that work without the regional and extensional work we intend to do there. Looking at the TANKORO deposit, different type of mineralisation. It's a big system. We've drilled it over about 16 kilometres. The mineralised corridor runs for about 30 kilometres. It extends on Endeavour's ground to the west. We've got quite a substantial oxide resource on this, and about 70% of the ounces are within the top 150 metres. Bulk of the strike's only tested to 70 metres. We typically, when we're drilling, if we don't think it's going to make it into a pit or into the resource substantially, we tend not to drill it. So we focus on areas that we think have the best chance of converting to reserves down the track. But this resource also has a high grade component. It's not as apparent in this, but there are two main structures, I guess, and then there's cross-linking structures, and where they intersect, we tend to get elevated grades and a lot more ounces. So the exploration work we're doing here is filling in some of the data gaps in the resource area, which should be a quick hit on some ounces, and also looking at strike extensions. We did the last drill program we did on this in 2019. We identified some flat structures in the southern oxide zone, which are always also higher tenor than what we've been seeing in the sub-vertical stuff. So that will be the subject of the first lot of our drilling. If you look at that image there, you'll see where it says north-northeast trending major lodes. And just off that, there's a marker there called Obi, if you can read it. That will be where we'll start drilling, looking at flat structures in that area, and then we'll kind of work up from there. Drilling is seasonal in Burkina Faso, so it typically runs November through June, July, and depending when the rains start to finish. Given that we're starting, more than midway through the season, we'll be pushing drilling as hard as we can. But we'll also have to be guided a bit by access. So the southern area of TANKORO tends to be wetter, so we really need to get our drilling into there in case we get caught by the rains early. So we'll work from the south to the north, as well as looking at what the technical and the corporate needs are. But TANKORO is work in progress. It's reasonably well understood, but the next round of drillings, it's highly focused, testing a few theories, but also looking at these flat structures in the south, and looking to just add more oxide ounces to the picture. So you can see here, TANKORO was drilled quite some time ago, so a lot of people related to the story probably don't realise the type of results we got earlier on. So we have two main prospect areas within the deposit, the MM and MC, and the host kind of roughly 3/4 of the metal in the system. You can see there also from the grade bins, you have these high grade shoots running to depth. So the MM prospect, we've tested that down to 500 metres, but really our main focus is what's going to fall into the schedule in the earlier years and focusing on oxide. But if you look at some of the drilling that we did into the MM and MC, there's some pretty solid intercepts there. It's just very finely disseminated gold in porphyry dikes, so it's different to what you see in other places where companies are putting out thick, high-grade intercepts because they've made it ploughed into a metre at 200 grams. This tends to be, fairly finely disseminated and with pretty solid grades. So there's a good development picture here from an open pit point of view, but also there's plenty of underground potential on this as well. There is several 100,000 ounces modelled in the resource of underground material. So to give you an idea of scale on that, the distance from MC to MM is about 1.5 to 2 kilometres. So that gives you an idea of the system. So it's still work in progress. But I think the main thing is this underwrites the development of the project. When you look at the broader project area, there is a scope for a material increase in oxides and free milling fresh material. So we have, obviously a big land area. You see within the catchment area there that 10 kilometre concentric circles, increases in radius, that TANKORO is really the center of gravity. You can see in that image just off to the left of TANKORO, a couple of red dots there. That's the Bantu and Bantu Nord deposits that are held by Endeavour. So if we didn't have a permit boundary, they'd probably be called TANKORO, and you'd have 4 million ounces there. So really, you know, the ultimate value play on this area is convincing Endeavour to bend that project into us and make for a much bigger project to take forward. We do see a lot of opportunity within the project area. So probably the number one target's at Zanoa in the northern part there. You can see up near Bondi. There's a new discovery there. The initial scout drilling results are very encouraging. So we, 22 metres at 3.8 grams. That's from 5 metres depth. All those results are shallow. So we've got mineralisation there over about 800 metres. We just need to work out what the orientation is, whether it's northeast or east-west. So it's very early days on that, but we're very optimistic that that will contribute to the resource. Likewise with Bamako, that's different again. That's a stacked high-grade gold quartz vein system, so about 3 kilometres in length. There's a lot of artisanal workings. We've had a couple of scout programs up there and got some good hits, and really the challenge up there is going to continuity. The better drilling intercepts, 15 at 6, 8 at 18. So it's kind of a binary outcome up there. If you hit, you get good grades. So really it's the challenge for us now is to stitch together enough to develop a few pits out that way. You can see the main road bisects that property, likewise with Bondi. So access is good. That's a paved road, so it's one of the main roads from Ouagadougou to Bobo. And then it's dirt road down to TANKORO. There is also a power line running through there now. It's just been installed, so we're optimistic that come time to build that we'll be able to access grid power as well and create a hybrid power setup there. Batoro is also interesting. It's far less advanced than Zanoa and Bamako and at lower priority. Then we also have another area called the Eastern Corridor. So if I put the soil anomalies up on that map, the Eastern Corridor lights up for about 20-25 kilometres. It's more discrete quartz veins, so it's a bit more of a challenge stringing stuff together there. But when you've got something that runs for 25 odd kilometres, then you've got a good chance of stringing together something of economic in nature. So you can see from that, given we're already close to 3 million ounces, that we're fairly optimistic that we'll give that number a pretty solid nudge. Most of the resource that we're targeting will be oxides. So we're really focused on the first 6 to 7 years of production and what that will look like and how quick we can make the payback on a project there. So looking at KOUMANDARA to the west, this is a very interesting project. We don't put a lot out on this because there's still some ground we want to pick up there, and people go through, competitors, let's say, go through what we put out. But there is a lot of gold there. We've got 70 kilometres strike gold and soil anomalies. The biggest anomaly is about 25 kilometres long by 3 to 5 kilometres wide. Sits on a major regional break, so geologically it ticks all the boxes for us. And the scout drilling we've done in the area, we've had some pretty decent hits as well that we want to follow up. So we've had 4 at 13. We've had 10 gram auger hits, 1 gram plus in soil. So it's quite good. The soil's tenor there is probably about double what we see at TANKORO. And geologically, it's more like we're seeing in the eastern part of the Hyundai belt where we operate. So we're pretty keen to get a few holes into that. We'll probably stick 5,000 metres into that in this next program to follow up some of the drilling from last time. So looking at key milestones, obviously the ASX listing is now finally done. So we raised $8 million there before expenses. Euroz Hartley's led that, so they did a great job. They've brought in a really good register when you go through the names that are on there. So we're very pleased with that. So now it's up to us to deliver on our end of the bargain. So with that effect, we'll start drilling immediately. And and we look to have results out within the next month or so, the first round of results, hopefully. That program, it's about a season's worth of drilling, so given where we're starting, we won't have any chance of getting it completed this season, so that'll get completed sometime into next exploration season, which, as I mentioned before, will start around November. When that's done, we'd look to do a resource update and look at what the next steps are there. We've done quite a lot of work internally on this to see what the project might or might not look like. So we've got a pretty good handle on that. So Paul's been looking after that, and he's a pretty high-end guy. So we're very confident in the work that's been done. And probably the bigger question for us at the moment is the cost escalation on CapEx, what that might look like and how that impacts things. But at a $1,800 or $1,900 gold price, the project's very solid. Probably the key inflection point's about $1,500. I think one of the things to kind of remember on the project is a lot of the drilling we did was done in a $1,100 or $1,200 gold price environment. So that's framed up a lot of our thinking, not $1,900. So that does have a bearing on the project. From a development point of view, when we've looked at it through a much lower cost lens from a development point of view. But yeah, we would contemplating putting out a PEA after the next resource update. Obviously, a PEA can't be published in Australia, but it will get filed in Canada. So Sarama now being dual listed, our primary listing is still Canada. Australia is a CDI. CDIs trade equally alongside common shares, but we still have our filing requirements in Canada. So we can file a PEA there. Obviously, we won't be able to make any mention of it in Australia, but that will give the market something to frame up and put some numbers around so they can get an idea of what the project looks like. But like I say, the work we've done internally, it looks good. If you talk of the current resource, if you said we extracted 45 to 50% of that, an all-in sustaining cost of $1,100, so then you can probably run some numbers on that. So and that's kind of where we kind of hope to land, or maybe a bit better than that. But really, our main focus over the next 12 months is just drilling and seeing how much we can grow the project. So when you're looking at the strategic drivers for investment, I think one of the things about Sarama as well is that the first step of the geological risk has been taken out. So it's not just a big land position where we're starting exploration and hoping we're going to find something. We already have. It's a strategic land position in very good rocks. We've already got a large resource that underpins value of the company, and we've still got quite a lot of exploration runway. So really the challenge for us is working out, when to stop exploration drilling and stick a pin in it and move this thing, up the curve. So I think that decision will be made at the end of this next program, because, we're hitting everything obvious. The valuation, particularly when you compare it to our African peer group, the West African peer group, it's still pretty compelling. So I think the geological, operating and geopolitical risk is more than reflected in our valuation at the moment. So we'd like to think there's significant room to the upside on that. And then obviously, being in a position for some time, be able to start drilling, which is the first time, for a very long time we've been in this position. So, and the company has been a bit moribund in Canada on the TSX due to lack of news flow and not being able to get things done. But I guess we're viewing this as a reset for the business. We've rejigged the board. We've always been based in Australia. So we've rejigged the board, got listed on the ASX, got some money in the tin, and we're drilling. So, we very much look forward to, showing what this project can be. We kind of know internally what it looks like, but we obviously really need to get to a position where we can show that externally. So that's kind of, I guess, is an overview of the company. It'd be good if this is interactive, but it's not, so I apologise for that. But as I said, feel free to contact me outside this if you have any questions. Happy to either do email or give you a call. We did have a few questions come in though prior to commencing this. So I guess the obvious question, which has been asked a few times, is, why did you list on the ASX and are we going to delist from the TSX? I think for us, listing on the ASX has been something we've wanted to do for some time, but the conditions hadn't been right corporately or market-wise. So that's the questions that we had. As mentioned, if you have any further questions, please feel free to reach out to Paul or myself. You have the info email there. So either come in through that or call the office, or basically our emails are effectively, I'm A. Denning at Sarama Resources and Paul's Peach me. So feel free to contact us on that. So I think that's pretty much it. That's a fairly long hit out for everybody to sit on there. Hopefully most people are still there. Like I say, sorry about the hiccups at the beginning, but hopefully that all came across well. If you have any future questions, please feel free to reach out. And I think there should be a recording available of this as well. But that's it. So thank you for your time, and we look forward to getting results out into the market and getting things moving. Okay, thanks very much.